Ready to go. So hi everyone, I'm Holly from Westpoint Cyber Talent. Just a quick thank you for attending and welcome to our webinar. I'm really excited for this one after seeing all the slides from Alex. So it's Alex Hutchinson, who is a software architect at Sofecta, delivering this talk. Sofecta are experts in cybersecurity and cloud development. So throughout the talk, if you can submit any questions through the Q&A at the bottom, that'd be great. I think that's everything from me. So without further ado, Alex, you can take it from here.
Thanks, Holly. So let me just get the slides up. All right, excellent. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. We're here to talk about EDR. I hope you all get something from it. You know, I reckon I'm going to probably learn something as well. It'd be great if we can kind of keep this conversation going. You know, please feel free to kind of ping me on LinkedIn afterwards. Love to hear about why you wanted to attend the webinar, and we can get a discussion going if you're having any issues. It'd be great to hear from you. So yeah, EDR. So I'm not going to go into too much really about the the kind of nuts and bolts of what EDR is, but I think that just to cover the bases, in case some of you really don't know what it is kind of clear to us that you know, there is a bit of a disparity, a bit of a misunderstanding about what it is, what it aims to achieve in the kind of, and where it fits in the whole landscape of cybersecurity. So endpoint detection and response is what this acronym stands for. Each one of these three words has a certain amount of significance to it. Endpoint meaning that we're talking about workstations and laptops in the main. Servers, to a lesser extent, the kind of profile, protection, monitoring profile of a server is of course very different, although EDR is just as effective in protecting servers as well. But we're talking in the main about user workstations, user laptops. Detection, of course, we're talking about the detection functionality, mainly rule-based detection, and more recently machine learning-based detections. And then of course the response, which is a big part of EDR functionality. It involves facilitates kind of an automated response to alerts. And that's of course a big potential saving, a big potential speeds up the process a lot, and we'll talk about it anyway in a bit later. And that's in a nutshell what it is. So what is it trying to achieve? What is it trying to kind of to fix, in a sense? This is really the key thing to sort of to talk about. The key thing is it's billed a lot of the time as advanced antivirus, meaning that it's about focusing on kind of advanced threat behaviors, which can very often go unnoticed. You know, I can sit here and quote kind of cybersecurity statistics. You know, every 13 seconds there's an attack, ransomware attack on an organization somewhere, or antivirus is less than 50% effective. I've heard that now, a couple of different independent sources. And the reason is that attackers are getting very adept at circumventing antivirus. You know, through fireless attacks, through living off the land processes, you know, process injection, abusing system software, the list goes on. And EDR helps to solve that through a number of different techniques. So another thing is that often the MTDD here, which is the mean time to detection, basically meaning how long it takes to discover a problem, is often can be too long. It can take too long to do it. Log sources might be spread in numerous locations. Data needs to be manually aggregated, pulling statistics together, and to basically establish whether it is a true threat or not. Requires a lot of manual work. Also, a related kind of thing, compliance reporting, again relating to having to manually pull together statistics and to compile some kind of report together, based on kind of like you know, how many endpoints are being protected, monitored, when did they last check in, those kind of basic metrics, you know, often have to be reported to management. It's extremely tricky to do by hand. Also a big advantage. Antivirus gets old, you know, very quickly. It's a static, in most cases, a static list of file hashes. Some go some way to being more advanced, but in the main, it is about file system monitoring in the main, which is not particularly dynamic. The software may be updated once every few weeks. In between those times, it stays pretty much as it is. And threat actors have got very good at essentially like padding files, malware at kind of at the file creation time, padding the file so the hash ultimately looks different, so it doesn't look like the hash which is on the antivirus lists. You know, is a common technique. You know, it's a common problem, and of course, as we all know, cybersecurity does come with it, with quite high kind of staff costs. There's a lot of maintenance involved. There's a lot of constant monitoring. That's up to now, or up to the before EDR, shall we say? Then, you know, it takes a lot of manual time, to cover those things. So that's what the problem looks like. So how does EDR kind of aim to solve these things? What can it offer in return, right? First and foremost is about the aggregation of log data, aggregation of logs from a number of different sources together into one place, which then essentially facilitates correlation. You know, correlation between events, which is really the key thing, and it really adds a lot of value. Being able to, as a small example, if something is identified on one endpoint, you can, in a matter of seconds or minutes, establish whether a similar chain of events has been found at an earlier stage on other machines as well. That kind of value has not been possible up to the point that EDR started to come into the picture. Not easily, anyway. Correlation is really a big aspect here. So it offers threat detection, but it also offers threat hunting. Threat hunting, essentially, we're talking about when an alert comes in. It's about what happens next. It's about the triage of the case. It's about tracing events, what we call process lineage, which is about tracing the events back to the root cause, in essence, and establishing at what point did the behavior start to become suspicious. And that can be often a long way before the alert was actually triggered. And so these things can be nipped in the bud a lot sooner on other endpoints as well. That's the idea. Endpoints profiles. So this is kind of like I mentioned already, basically the difference between the way a server needs to be protected and the way a user workstation needs to be protected. I mean, a common example is one of the most common kind of weaknesses really of a user workstation is essentially about Microsoft Office documents, for instance, that are injected with malicious code. It's a very common technique. 9 times out of 10, of course, Microsoft Office is not going to be installed on servers. There is no kind of common, Microsoft Outlook, of course, is not going to be installed on a server. Means there's not really any threat coming in the form of phishing emails and so on. These are still very common, very common techniques. So the profile is different, but also the profile is very different in terms of different classifications of laptops. You may be talking about a developer workstation might need to be protected differently from an executive laptop, for instance. Developer workstations traditionally create a lot more alerts based on the nature of their work, and a lot of those alerts may well be false alarms. So they need to be flagged as such. But it also, in terms of limiting the amount of staff time that needs to be put in, then of course we can adapt the profile and basically deploy the agent to the machine, which is monitoring different things for different classes of machines, right? And this is something which is not been easily possible with traditional antivirus. And of course, the last point is, of course, automated actions. This is a key part of the functionality. Being able to automatically take some form of action across all workstations potentially. That's really a key thing. We can really do a lot with an automated response, and I would imagine in the future that this is an area which will probably see some significant developments. It's kind of a real growth area at the minute. So we really get to the nitty gritty here. I mean, all sounds great, right? Fantastic. Sounds lovely. Where's my wallet? But does it really live up to the expectations? And this is the thing: it's about expectations of what people have about EDR, and the fact that there isn't a great understanding of where it fits. I already have great antivirus. What do I need this for? I already have a CM, very reliable CM system. Why do I need something else? And those companies that have decided to invest in EDR, is it doing the things that they expect? These things can't be taken for granted, and it's an important discussion to have. We're very open, at least, to hearing the features that are missing and features that are just not working. So let's go through some of the kind of drivers of this kind of idea of value. Which is kind of might be different really from the feature list. That's in black and white, but this is something else in a sense. So the cost and feature ratio, and this is like how much it costs over what you're getting for your money. The EDR marketplace has kind of exploded in the last couple of years, as you probably know. Gartner peer insights. I mean, last count was something like 34 kind of actively monitored EDR device, EDR platforms. There's no doubt a lot more. 34 different vendors, all of them offering quite a different feature set. There are some broad similarities, of course, but it's important to recognize that EDR is essentially like a marketing concept. Things are being rebranded as EDR even, because people are sort of realizing that it's it's what people want, isn't it? So what I'm saying is essentially that sometimes the lower cost EDR platforms often get better reviews. I mean, I've noticed that in Gartner's reviews, for instance, and you're thinking, okay, well then that must mean then there's a little bit of a disparity between cost and feature balance, kind of expectation over what they're getting. Then there's the issue of total cost of ownership. It's not just the cost of the platform, it's the cost of the additional staff time involved. What can we, this is something that can't be underestimated to an extent. There's always an initial investment of time, especially when the platform is new, and it's something that has to be factored into the overall cost. A platform that is already very expensive, in some cases, not all. If the total cost of ownership is not taken into account, then that can obviously affect the perception of value quite a lot. The quality of the user interface, of course. Some are excellent, some are not so excellent. Kind of important that at least users have a single place to go to administer the system, irrespective of the number of integrations there are and so on. Is the user interface itself easy to use, easy to navigate for a non-security expert? And that's also a key thing here, that you shouldn't need extensive IT security knowledge. And this is kind of an important one, as to how the visibility into non-endpoint data. So what I mean by this, one good example is network data. Network appliance data. Your switches, your VPN gateways, your firewalls are all obviously critical pieces in the puzzle. That they are essentially border devices, as it were, into the enterprise network. Their data is of great value, and being able to correlate that data would of course be vital. Many don't include that kind of data by default. An EDR is about collecting endpoints and monitoring endpoint information and then delivering it to a central point by default. The quality of the feeds, indication of compromised feeds, detection rules, where are the rules come from, where are the feeds coming from, are they respected, have they done them themselves, the vendor, are they offering something extra? These things should be sort of taken into account as well. They vary massively between vendors, so it's important to understand and understand. This really is the key. The quality of the detection level, has to be absolutely top dollar at the expense of other things potentially, because it's all about detection. If there's no detections, then there's really no EDR. Also, the level of support is extremely important. Certainly in the beginning, you're going to need a lot of support, and level of support which is going to be able to listen to what you want to achieve. every company is different. Every company profile is different. They have different needs. The company needs to be able to sit around a table with you and basically talk about what it is you want to achieve, what your other platforms are. You know, are there any? How can we get them working together? You know, it's that's the way to ensure really that you're getting kind of a valuable product. Off the shelf kind of systems of this type, you handed your credentials and a bit of initial documentation and say, okay, well, off you go. Probably not really enough. Not really enough. It's a complex, potentially a complex process, at least in the beginning. And extensibility, I kind of hinted at that. So basically, how extensible, how customizable the platform is. So a little bit about sort of how many alerts is enough. This is a big key factor. Too few alerts is a bit of a red flag sometimes for people. So if there's nothing coming in, it shouldn't be alarming, but sometimes it is. They question whether it's working. Is it configured properly? Essentially justifiable questions. So by the same token, if there's too many alerts, of course, this is a well documented problem with EDR and CM platforms as well. The fear of kind of alert fatigue, kind of boy who cried wolf scenario, where you're just seeing too many alerts and you just can't be bothered anymore to go and analyze things. And this is potentially one of the most dangerous situations to be in. So getting it right, tuning it is really enough. Is really an important thing. So some reasons why configuration, simple configuration, basically, are you basically prioritizing the alerts well enough? Do you really need to be alerted about every single low level kind of detection rule, for instance? Really, it's a company by company thing. Are there any automated actions in use? Re-alerting might be just too much. You really don't want to be seeing the same alert over and over again. And it's about flagging the false positives. I can't kind of stress that enough. It's really vital. Machine learning. So this is another big area. So we're seeing it more and more. It's very prevalent across many, not just IT security, but software in general. It's really a prevalent thing. But again, it's important to understand what it's aiming to do, and not just accepting that it's a black box that you shovel data into, and then out the other end comes insights. There needs to be a bit of an understanding as to what are we aiming to achieve by using these. And machine learning comes in several forms in EDR world. We have machine learning detection rules, which can work very, very well. It's about handling those cases that would be extremely complicated to develop a query, single query for detecting something. Machine learning kind of fits that use case very, very well. Handles complexity very, very well. Malware detection is another big place where it's being used. Again, I mentioned about the kind of very easy ways that attackers can change file hashes, and this is about detecting changes in that file hash does it look enough like an instance of malware we've seen before, and it can detect on that basis. And also about behavioral anomaly detection. So about let's say user user behavior and does something look, out of place? Has there been a credential spoofing attack? Has the individual's credentials? Are we really seeing that person's behavior in terms of the systems they would normally log into, when, where, from where, etc. So a little bit about the future then, kind of to wrap up really. So, I mentioned about where does EDR fit in? I mean, it's not that it replaces a CM or it replaces antivirus necessarily, right? Really, these things have a role of their own. Certainly a CM, EDR, they are separate. They have their own spheres of use. CM, of course, is about principally aggregating log information to one place and alerting and deeper analysis based on logs. EDR, it's not purely about log data. It analyzes kernel level activities that doesn't necessarily appear in logs. So the both of them complement each other very well. But integrating them together is really a key thing. I mentioned about the importance of correlation. So ensuring that we're able to correlate data from network appliances that may be in CM data, with endpoint data or something that's happening within a kernel level process, making network connections to point X, being able to correlate the data across the whole enterprise, data set is really the way forward. So automated alert triage. So this is like alerting based on alerts, right? This is kind of theoretical area right now. So, but really, this is a way things are probably going to go. So it's not about necessarily getting an alert at the alert point, but it's about taking an automated step forward, and then maybe alerting further down the line if there has been, let's say, a simple example would be if there's been five similar alerts, maybe that would be the time to alert, and that's just a very, very simple example. Of course, lookup integrations and all of those things, kind of automating that manual work. And if staff costs are an issue, if the additional staff costs are just too high, then of course there are solutions such as managed EDR, managed DR, shall we say? So managed detection and response. So you're essentially you're buying also the security expertise to make the analysis, maybe if that's missing in your organization. SaaS, of course, is a great example. Massive cost savings, taking the hassle out of managing the platform off your shoulders. Of course, that might be also something to consider as well. Yeah, so that's about it. I think for this time. So I think we have some time for some questions. I think next,
Well, thank you for that, Alex. I really enjoyed that. I hope everyone else did as well. I think that was really valuable. So yeah, question time. If everyone could submit the questions through the Q&A section on the bottom, that'd be great. So we've got a couple of questions that I can see. First one from Dimitri. What would you say, in your view, is the difference between EPP and EDR?
It's a great question. I think, to be honest, they're kind of interchangeable terms. Both of them are kind of ultimately marketing concepts. At the end of the day, it's important that these things are not written in stone. There are a lot of overlap with all of these systems. There's overlap of functionality between them, and you can just as easily, by looking at a subset of functionality, call it EPP, EDR, CM, potentially even as well. Some CM systems share a lot of functionality with EDR, for instance, or EPP. certainly on the alerting side, some even offer on their own response kind of response functionality. So in answer to the question, there kind of ain't no difference between the two in the main.
Okay, cool. So I've actually got a question myself. So if someone had a really good theme, do they really need the EDR as well?
It's a great question. So like I mentioned before, it's kind of like you know, they both cover you know, a different sphere of protection, shall we say. CM is on a log level, basically. It's about the aggregation of logs, not necessarily basically on the so much on the kind of response side, but it's about the aggregation of log data and the analysis of those logs and correlation of those logs. They're both complementary systems, you know, and in a perfect world, we should have one holistic security platform without having to worry about the maintenance and monitoring of SIEM and EDR separately, and kind of handling a messy integration between the two. You know, a platform that would do everything together seamlessly would be ideal.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for answering that one. So we've got a couple more. So in your opinion, which feature is more important, ML for profiling or ML for detection, and why?
Profiling or detection. So I think given that some of the cases, some of the detection cases, certainly on a malware side, some EDR platforms offer basically like what they call a malware scoring based on a machine learning model. It's a machine learning model that in some cases is like not just tuned based on the company's own data, but it's a kind of like a also tuned based on internet data shared between other platforms. So it's a really quite a valuable machine learning model, and there's a lot of value in that. Basically, you know, you're talking about up to the minute data of malware hashes, and the ability to basically kind of intelligently decide, okay, well, this is not matching the hash, but does it look like to within an acceptable parameter? Does it look like malware to me? You know, and it's very effective at doing that. So detection, given the two.
Brill. Another anonymous question. So is an EDR solution capable of offering centralized local FW management, sorry?
FW management. Not familiar with the term. What does FW refer to here?
So could the anonymous attendee retype the question and through the Q&A again? Firewall management.
Yeah, sure. So is it what was the question in all in all? Does it replace firewall, like firewall management?
Is an EDR solution capable of offering centralized local firewall management?
Yeah. So short answer is no. Essentially, the kind of perimeter, and the reason is of course a firewall. It really runs. It depends on where the firewall is running. If it's a software-based firewall, for instance, it runs on a Linux box. Yeah, I mean, still still, it would really be the sphere of SIEM kind of functionality. You know, in terms of you know, even though we can say, okay, well, when it's a Linux machine, yes, EDR will basically offer some protection, but it's offering protection for the endpoint itself. Whereas firewall, it's about, what we need is monitoring of the firewall logs, in essence, and a kind of aggregation of those firewall logs. So I mean, basically, yeah, I would say no in a short answer. Not on its own, not without a SIEM system integrated very closely.
Okay, perfect. So we've got a couple of questions from Marek. So what about cloud distributed microservice solutions? And he's also asked, what about fireless attacks?
Yeah. So there's great possibilities in terms of detecting fireless attacks with EDR. You know, it comes down to the kind of attacks that the traditional antivirus just cannot detect. EDR agent, an EDR always works. It works on a pretty much, you know, across the board. You know, on a kind of agent server basis. There's a small agent installed which is monitoring operating system level, low level operations, kernel level if we're talking Linux, and that's why it's able to monitor all running processes at the point of execution, and also obviously the traditional kind of monitoring file system. And it's through that process that it's able to detect any kind of process injection activity, behavior, and it is very, very effective in doing that. Does involve a bit of work on the IT team side, basically, again, like weed out the false positives, because there will be instances when normal, you know, normal behavior will be thrown up as a threat when it isn't. Certainly on, like I mentioned, on like a developer machine, for instance. So yes, EDR very good at fireless attacks.
Perfect. So the next one is, with most EDR vendors now cloud-based, how do you see that panning out for organizations making strategic purchasing decisions, including integration or monitoring on-premises systems?
Yeah. So, you know, there is an inherent fear of shipping security data to the cloud. I mean, I can completely understand that, and it really it's about a kind of an implementation question. You know, in truth, we, you know, disclaimer, we also offer cloud SaaS-based EDR, and we've taken a lot of care and time to ensure that the traffic from on-site to off-site is absolutely secure. You know, there can be elements of the system which can be also run on process. In terms of our platform, it can be run just as easily on-prem as well. Of course, that means that then there's more responsibility on the customer side to maintain and ensure that it's running. You know, but I would say that don't be too scared about shipping your logs to the cloud. It's very, very safe these days if it's configured and a trusted vendor.
Well, thank you. So I think this is the last one that we have. So would EDR be better at detecting a zero-day attack?
Absolutely, yeah. I would say. I mean, I'm always trying to be objective in my answers, trying to think that, okay, well, you know, take the objective view here. But the fact of the matter is that it does take time in the absence of EDR, the time to detect an attack is, is on average about 3 hours. Talking statistics. So, an EDR does have the abilities to basically detect events in essence before they happen. Which is the essence of the question. So, the correlation functionality is key. In order that if something is seen suspicious on one machine, through a very quick analysis of how it has arrived at that point, we can stop it from progressing much further earlier in the process everywhere else, and putting in place an automated response for that scenario. That's the kind of basic workflow. It's about seeing an alert. Okay, is it real? Yes, it is. All right, what can we do to make it stop, to help it, to ensure that it doesn't happen elsewhere in the infrastructure.
And just one more, just wanted to highlight the key element on why EDR is the better choice versus EPP.
So basically, EDR offers potentially, I would say like a potentially better integrations with a kind of a CM system as well. But I do need to highlight that really the two terms are, in terms of key feature sets, they are, pretty much one and the same platform. I think that what EDR offers, what it specializes in, is about complex automated responses, in order to basically minimize staff involvement in the process. There's always staff involvement. It's important to recognize that it's not entirely automated, but there is, as of the picture today, a lot of very effective automation possibilities there.
Well, thank you. So I think that's all the questions now. So yeah, thank you for everyone who attended, and obviously a massive thank you to Alex for hosting the talk. So from now we will send over the full recording to everyone as soon as we possibly can. In the meantime, if you want to join us over on LinkedIn in the Cyber Lounge with all the other cybersecurity experts, and sort of continue the discussion there. Yeah, so that's all from us. Next week we're running a webinar with Ian Murphy on why we fall victim to the same types of cyber attacks, and we will send over that link as well with the recording of this webinar. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you, Alex, and I hope everyone has a great day, and hope we'll see you all next week again.